That ain't tack tape. I don't care what your eyes are trying to tell you to make this easier. That ain't tack tape. Because tack tape don't blink. I counted 5. 5. I know I counted 5. Slow and careful. Right there in my beam. And there's a 6th one now. Low in the laurel. Pressed into bark that I never touched. And it just blinked at me. Both of them blinked together. Soft. Like a eye closing and opening in a dream you can't wake from. And now they're moving. Sliding down that trunk, easy as water finding the low ground. And I gotta stop talking long enough to watch where it goes. Because if I look away from it, I got a feeling I won't find it again. Just give me one more second. Well now, come on in out of that draft and pull that blanket up over your knees. Because if you're hearing my voice in the dark tonight, you're already about halfway to where I need you to be. My name's Silas Vance. Folks up and down this ridge have called me Abe since before I could shave. On account of my granddaddy carried that same Abraham, and I answered to it long before I ever answered to my own Christian name. I've lived on this mountain the better part of 70 years. First down in my daddy's cabin along the hollow bottom, then up here closer to the trail, once my knees quit forgiving me for the climb both ways. I've slept under more open sky and rotted shelter roofing than most men sleep under a proper ceiling. And in all them years, there's only a handful of nights that still sit cold in my chest when I lay my own head down. This is one of 'em, and I'm going to tell it slow, the way it happened, because slow is the only way this mountain ever tells anybody anything. Now, some of you're new to sitting with me of an evening, so let me set the porch light on who I am before we go any further into the dark. I was raised on stories same as this one, told to me by men who smelled of wood smoke and chew and never once raised their voice above what the fire needed. My daddy walked this ridge as a boy the way I did, and his daddy before him. And somewhere along that long line of Vance men, somebody decided it fell to us to keep count of what happens up here and pass it on proper, so it don't get lost the way so much else gets lost on a mountain like this. I've guided lost thru-hikers down off this very ridge in weather that would have buried a lesser man's good sense, and sat with search parties in the cold hours before dawn, holding a thermos and not much hope. And I've learned in all that time that the stories folks call folklore up here ain't folklore at all. They're just reports. Slow reports told by slow men about a mountain that don't hurry for nobody. And don't forget nothing either. It was late October, the kind of late where the leaves have already give up their color and gone the brown of old paper. And the cold comes down off the ridge, not like weather, but like something that's been waiting all year for its turn. A solo hiker, I won't trouble you with which direction he was walking, because direction don't matter much to what's coming, had made his camp at a three-sided shelter tucked back off the trail. One of them old lean-tos built of hand-hewed logs gone silver with age, open on the fourth wall to whatever the night decided to bring. And what it brought that night, before the boy even got his pack off his shoulders, was fog. Now, I don't mean the thin kind that burns off with the first bit of sun. I mean what we call up here the granddaddy fog. Fog that don't roll in so much as it simply arrives, like it had been sitting there the whole time, patient, and only now decided to let itself be seen. It's thick as milk poured slow into water, and it swallows sound the same way it swallows light, so that a man standing 20 feet off can call your name, and it'll reach you soft and flat, like it come from 20 miles instead. Old-timers will tell you the granddaddy fog only shows up thick as that on nights when the mountains got something it means to do. I didn't used to put much stock in that particular piece of superstition. I do now. That fog don't just take your sight, neither. It takes your sense of size. A tree 10 feet off can look like it's leaning right over your shoulder, and the sound from a boulder 40 yards off can land against your ear, soft and close as a whisper, meant only for you. It's a lonesome dark, the granddaddy fog. Not empty lonesome. The mountain's never truly empty, but lonesome the way a room feels once you notice you can't see the walls no more. The hiker had made good time that day, but he'd let his water run down low. Foolish enough thing to do this far into a cold season, when a body don't feel the thirst the way he does in July. And by the time he got his tarp strung and his bag laid out, his last bottle was near empty, and the map showed a spring branch a short piece off the trail, down through a stand of laurel thicket, so dense and dark it looked, in his headlamp beam, less like brush and more like a wall somebody'd grown on purpose to keep folks from wandering where they didn't belong. Now here's where I want you to lean in close, because this next part is the part that matters, the part that always matters in these stories, which is the small, sensible mistake that don't feel like a mistake at all when you're making it. He knew that thicket, once the fog thickened up proper, was going to eat his light and his sense of direction both. So he did what any careful hiker's been taught to do. He dug down in his pack and come up with a little tin of retroreflective silver thumbtacks, the kind meant for hanging notices on a corkboard, cheap and bright, but coated in that same sheetin' they put on road signs, so that a headlamp catches 'em and throws the light clean back at you, like a little star nailed into the bark. One by one, going down toward the water, he pressed 5 of 'em into 5 trees, spaced out along the game path he was following, so that coming back in the dark and the fog, all he'd have to do is count his silver dots and know he was walking true. It's a fine practice. I've taught it to greener hikers myself more than once, back when I still guided folks through these hollows. There's nothing wrong with the thumbtacks. There's nothing wrong even with trusting 'em. A little silver point of borrowed light pressed into bark at eye level has walked plenty of frightened souls home safe over the years, mine included, back when I was young enough to still get myself turned around down in them bottoms. But a marker's only ever as honest as the hand that counts it. And out here, in that particular hollow, on that particular night, with the granddaddy fog pressing in the way it was, the counting hand belonged to a tired young man who'd walked near 20 miles since sunup, and just wanted, more than anything else in the world right then, to lay his body down. The trouble was in what he did with that trust on the way back. He filled his bottles at the spring, water so cold it ached his teeth just from the smell of it. And he started back up through the laurel, with the granddaddy fog pressed in thick all around him now. Thick enough that his headlamp beam didn't so much light the path as carve out one small tunnel of white in a world gone otherwise the color of a blind eye. And in that tunnel, right on schedule, his light caught the first tack. 1. He counted it out loud to himself, the way a tired man will, just to hear a voice in all that quiet. Then the second further up. 2. Then the third. 3. His boots finding the same soft ground they'd found coming down, his mind settling some, easing back from that low hum of worry that fog puts in a person. 4. 5. 5. Same as he'd pressed in, same as he expected. And that should have been the end of it. 5 tacks out, 5 tacks counted back, shelter just a short piece on. A sensible man, satisfied, would have kept walking the exact same line his boots already knew. But the fog does something to a man's eyes that it don't do to his feet. It makes him trust the light over the ground. And so when his headlamp, swinging just slightly wide as he stepped around a blowdown, caught a 6th glint, small, silver, low against a trunk deeper in the brush than any tack he recalled placing. He didn't think stranger. He thought I must have miscounted. Simple as that. A tired mind looking for the easiest answer. And the easiest answer is always the one that don't ask you to be afraid. So he turned off his own true path, the one his boots had already walked twice that night, and he followed that sixth glint instead. He'd tell himself in them first few steps that it was only a small correction, a few feet off his line, nothing more. Easy enough to fix once he touched a hand to that tack and confirmed it for what it was. That's how the mountain likes to do its asking. Never a shout, never a shove. Just a small, reasonable little detour that a tired man's mind is only too glad to grant. And that, friend, is the moment the mountain always waits for. The geometry of the thing shifted, quiet as a held breath. The laurel thicket that had been a wall on either side of a known trail become, in 3-4 steps, a wall on every side of no trail at all. The shelter, that solid, sensible, 3-sided shelter with its silver-gray logs and its promise of a wall against the wind, it didn't fade so much as it simply ceased being reachable. Swallowed whole into what I've come to call the unmapped void. That stretch of hollow that don't appear on any Forest Service map, that don't show up in any GPS track, that exists, best I can figure, only for as long as it takes to get a body good and lost in it. He kept walking toward that sixth silver point, because by then it was the only fixed thing left in a world gone soft and white and formless all around him. The fog pressed closer the deeper he went, till he could feel it against his face like a hand held just shy of touching him. And the glint, it didn't come no closer the way a tack ought to, steady and still, waiting on him to walk up to it. It seemed instead to be waiting on something else entire. When he'd closed the distance down to maybe 10 feet, he started to notice the shape of it wrong. A thumbtack throws back one small, hard point of light, flat and unblinking, same as a nail head or a bit of foil. This was thrown back two points, set a careful hand's width apart, same height as a man's face if that man was crouched low against the bark, watching. At 8 feet, he could see they weren't flat. They had a wetness to 'em, a glossy give, the kind of shine that don't come off metal but off something that's alive and blinking slow, catching the light and holding it a beat too long before letting it go. And even as he stood there, boots rooted, breath fogged out in front of him and joining the granddaddy fog like it belonged there now. Those two wet silver points turned, just slightly, just enough, to follow the sweep of his headlamp beam, the way an animal's eyes will follow a light in the dark. Except an animal generally has the good sense to also have a body attached. And this had bark behind it, and bark to either side of it, and no shape at all that a light could properly land on and call an animal. That's when they started sliding. Slow, awful slow, the way something moves when it has all the time God ever made and don't feel a need to rush a single second of it. Down the trunk, toward the forest floor, leaving behind 'em no track in the bark, no smear, no sign a body could point a flashlight at come morning and say, there, that's where it went. Just two wet silver eyes sinking down into the leaf litter and the granddaddy fog like they were being poured out of the tree itself. He didn't run. I want you to understand that part because it matters. A body will always figure, when it pictures a moment like that one, that they'd turn tail and bolt back the way they come. But the fog don't leave you a way you're certain of. And a man standing still in the granddaddy fog with his boots planting roots of their own will tell you after, if he's able to tell you anything at all, that running never once crossed his mind. Only watching. Only that same slow, cold need to see where the thing was headed, same as you'd watch water go down a drain, knowing full well you can't call it back up once it's started. And the last thing that hiker ever said out loud, near as anybody's been able to piece together, was that they'd stop blinking at him and started instead just to watch. Now, I've told this story a good many times to a good many folks huddled up round a fire or listening in the dark, same as you are now. And there's always somebody asks me, well, Abe, what happened to him? Where'd he end up? And the honest truth, friend, the only truth I've ever had to offer on this particular tale is I don't rightly know. His pack was found 3 days on, still strung up neat under that 3-sided shelter, water bottles full, like he'd meant to come right back. There was 5 silver tacks pressed into 5 trees down along that spring path, exactly where a careful man would have left 'em. There wasn't no 6th. There never is, once the mountain's done counting for itself. Because that's the part I want to leave with you tonight, low and quiet, before you let your own eyes go heavy. Up here we've got a saying older than any map, older than any trail blaze painted white on a trunk. The mountain keeps track. It keeps track of every soul that walks it, every light a body sets down to find their way back, and every one of them small, sensible markers we press into the dark to prove to ourselves we won't get lost. Most nights that tracking is a kindness. It's a mountain remembering you, watching you home safe, same as I've watched hundreds home safe over these 70 years. But some nights, on a ridge swallowed in granddaddy fog thick enough to eat a man's own name right out of his mouth, that trackin' turns into something else. Something that adds one more marker of its own into your count, low in the laurel thicket, wet and patient and silver, just to see if you're paying close enough attention to notice which one of your lights was never really yours to begin with. So you go on and count your own 5 wherever you're laying tonight. Count 'em slow, count 'em careful. And if your tired eyes ever throw you back a 6th, you do what that boy didn't have the sense, or maybe just didn't have the years to do. You leave it be. You turn around. You walk home on the path your own boots already know. This has been Abe, up here on the ridge, same as always. And I'll see you next time the fog rolls in thick enough to talk through. Sleep easy now. Sleep slow. And don't go counting past 5.